Zoë Scholtz has recently published her memoir, Running in Heels, From ICU to Ultramarathon. This book is Zoe's honest account of how she fought off a mysterious disease that left her in ICU in a coma for 10 days. Determined to get back to complete recovery, she adopted a walking and running activity to stimulate her mental and physical health during this difficult time. And now to tell us more about her experience to eventual triumph as she tells it in this offering, Zoe joins me now on Zoom. Zoe, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure, Zoe. Now, your journey, as you narrated in this book, is incredibly inspiring, Zoe. Tell us about what propelled you to tell the story through this book.
So can I be honest and say my mom made me do it?
Okay.
That's actually how it started. My mom signed me up for a writing mentorship. I'm actually an accountant by profession. Mm-hmm. And she signed me up and I got this email and I was like, okay. So I phoned her and I said, what is this? Because she actually forgot to tell me that she'd done that. So that was why I started. But I guess I finished it because firstly it was a challenge. Writing a book is a bit like running a marathon.
Yeah.
And secondly, you know, it's a story, I guess, that needed to come out. I think there's probably other writers that will tell you that once you get going, the story gets a mind of its own. So.
Yeah. You know, Zoe, tell us about this mysterious illness that you experienced that left you in a coma.
Well, yeah, I guess just that it was mysterious. Till today, no idea what it was.
Really?
No idea. They tested me pretty much for everything in the book. And yeah, 10 days in a coma and came out of it and sort of, I have no recollection of those 10 days. It was really upsetting for me at the time, but I guess my bigger worry was more what happens after that. You know, there's some things you try and figure out. I tried for a while to remember, but I kind of put that eventually in a box and tried to decide how I was going to move on with the rest of my life.
Sure. You know, Zoe, I can only imagine the frustration that you felt. I mean, being afflicted by an illness that you don't know of, that nobody knows of, and that you can't do anything about. And you took quite a long time to recovery, and you also required intensive rehabilitation. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I guess I never thought about it. In my naivety, when I came out of hospital, in my head, I felt fine. And I didn't really appreciate the fact that there actually was going to need to be a rehabilitation process, in particular with brain-related injuries or trauma. And part of my rehabilitation process was to try and correct the impact that my illness had on my balance. So I was actually a really proficient at walking backwards, but going forwards was a problem. I'd walk in circles or I'd look a little drunk. So there was no, I didn't really give it much thought, but my husband fortunately was quite adamant that I needed to go through a proper rehabilitation process. So I booked into step down for a week and followed that up with some biokineticist sessions. And part of that left me needing to walk for 3 kilometers or 30 minutes or so every day. And I guess that's really where it started, because at the time, 3 kilometers was so far. And eventually I got bored and I thought, oh, well, maybe I should try running it, which was actually a perfectly awful idea. I thought I wasn't going to make it to the 3rd street lamp. But yeah, it was intriguing and it was a challenge. And if you've read it, you'll see. I mean, I was really a terrible athlete at school.
And you hated running as a child, so I'm told. And you were not that brilliant at athletics. Tell us about that urge that propelled you to adopt this form of physical activity. Yes,
so hated running. In particular, when, you know, at school, when they forced you to take part in everything. And then I think probably my biggest fear was I was going to come last, which I probably almost did on quite a few occasions. But I think it's also about fitness to a large degree. Fitness plays a big role. But I think as I started to, become a little bit more physically fit, perhaps the biggest lesson I learned there was that it's really more about your head. running is a mental challenge. So that really appeals to me. I really enjoy a challenge. And yes, so from 3 kilometers, I guess it just grew from there. Running kind of picked me in a way. It's been a conduit for me to learn a huge amount and to grow as a person. And it generally just appeals to my nature. I'm a fairly resilient person, and endurance running in particular appealed to my nature.
All right, Zoë, it was June 2018, right? And you were in front of the computer entering the marathon that was taking place in November of the same year. What is going on in your mind at that particular time, Zoë?
Yeah, so then you think to yourself, this was a perfectly awful idea. What am I thinking? Why am I even doing this?
Why, though?
Again, it's that subconscious thought, maybe, just maybe I can do it. I think my biggest problem has always been my fear of failure. And it's that conquering of yourself more than anything else. It's overcoming that part where you label yourself, well, I do that. I'm a professional at telling myself I can't do things. So I'll set a goal and it sounds like a great idea at the time. And then when I actually have to achieve the goal, I'm like, what were you thinking? Why are you doing this to yourself? But to look back and realize that you've done it, that sense of satisfaction and those achievements that when you reflect on them, they sort of all combine. And I think that marathon was part of it. It was a culmination at the time of many different smaller races, a lot of time on the road, and a lot of discipline.
Sure. And when people come to you for advice, of which they will after seeing this interview, I'm sure, what do you say to them, Zoë, especially about the physical and the mental benefits of keeping active and fit?
Yes, that's a really good question. I don't profess to be a professional runner by any stretch of the imagination, but I think for me, it's been about consistency and the enormous impact of just taking one step and building on that one step at a time. And then perhaps the thread that runs through all of it is just don't give up. Just never give up, because if you give up, you're giving up on yourself, and you owe it to yourself to at least try. If you don't try, you'll never know.
Indeed.
The worst thing that can happen is you don't finish, maybe.
Yeah, and I can only imagine the regret of not trying. Now, there's a long list of people that you thank and acknowledge for being a part of your story and your journey. Just take us through some of the people that played a role in your life during that period.
Wow, the list is extensive. So yes, my husband, he's just been an absolute rock. He's the yin to my yang. Always there, always supportive, and always willing to provide a kick in the pants when I sort of definitely need it. Obviously, my mom, she's crazy, she's nutty. We're very similar, bumped heads a lot of times, but she's my biggest cheerleader. Love her to bits. And then my dad, in his absence, a lot of this I've tried to live up to what I see as his legacy. I really miss him. I know he's sitting up on his cloud there going, come on, my girl, don't give up.
You can do this.
And then, of course, some of the other people, perhaps you'll see if you read the acknowledgements, but Bruce Fordyce has been incredibly supportive to me, both in writing my book as well as in my parkrun journey and from parkrun to my first marathon. And a lot of mentors along the way. My coach, Lindley, the Irene Running Club, they've really provided me with an enormous foundation to fall back on. Advice, what do you do? What do you eat? What shoes do you wear? How often to run? How far? And it's always been a safe space that I can go back to. So I'm incredibly grateful to the running club for that as well.
Okay. Zoë, you have no idea how much lives you've touched just by this interview. And those watching this interview are so inspired. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a super day. All
right, you too. Thank you. Well, there we go. That was author and self-proclaimed non-athlete Zoë Scholtz. And we were just in conversation with her about her memoir titled Running in Heels.